Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is episode 83. You turned us on because you want to learn about the news, and well, so do we. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger. And today is October 5th, 2013.
George, let's move on to story number one. It's kind of a slow news week. There's no big terrorism news, thank God. There's no big Anglican crisis news, thank God. So we're going to cover Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury. He is not going to GAFCON. Now, when I was a young man once, I would call girls and ask them out, hey, you want to go to a movie? Oh, I'm washing my hair. Oh, the dog just died. Oh, we're boiling eggs. Good excuses all. But I think Archbishop Justin Welby has the best excuse of them all. He's going to be baptizing the future King of England. What should we think about this, George?
Well, you can't get out of that. I mean, the Archbishop of Canterbury's got one job, that's ministering to the Queen and her family, and this sort of comes first. GAFCON runs from a Monday through a Saturday, and on the Wednesday, the 26th of October, he will be baptizing Prince George of Cambridge at the Chapel Royal at St. James's Palace. So he can't make it. And the day before, the Monday and the Tuesday, he's going to be in Iceland at a meeting of the primates of the Porvoo Conference, which are the Anglican churches of Europe and the Nordic Lutheran churches. However, he's free for Wednesday afternoon, Thursday, and Friday, and he is going to send down a video greeting. Not a live Skype report. He could have, in other words, he's not doing what he did in Toronto 2 weeks ago, where he gave a live presentation via Skype. He's sending a nice little pre-recorded meet and greet message. There's a lot of wheels within wheels within wheels involved in all this.
Well, there's a lot to be taken out from this. Does Archbishop Welby hope GAFCON succeeds? Yeah, in a way. I'm sure he supports the initiative. However, GAFCON and the Church of England are not the greatest of friends. There's a lot of ebb and throw that's been going on now for the last 5 years. And whereas Welby and a lot of the bishops are sympathetic, there's a lot of stuff that's been happening behind the scenes that have kind of, I don't want to use an English term, but made England bishops unhappy, George.
Yeah, remember 2008, Kevin, there were two English bishops, Wallace Benn and Michael Nazarali, who were present at GAFCON. Both of those men have since retired, and they've not been replaced by the GAFCON English crew with new bishops. And the GAFCON English crew has also been tied up in the Church of England's internal battles, women bishops, for instance, human sexuality, and there's local politics at work within the GAFCON movement in England that affects it internationally. There are some bishops who look at GAFCON as being troublemakers, if you will, a stalking horse for an ACNA in England, if you will. And so if Justin Welby goes to GAFCON and gets embraced by them, he's going to get hammered by some of the House of Bishops on the left who look at him as sort of, being disloyal. And so it's almost a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. He can't get, Justin Welby probably is the most sympathetic of all the English bishops currently seated in the House of Bishops right now. But he can't get too far out ahead of his troops, or he could find himself in a very dicey political situation.
But you and I remember being at the first GAFCON, everybody said this is a one and out. This is a one-hit wonder, they'll never be able to do this again. I think if GAFCON 2 pulls itself off well and starts acting like an Anglican Congress or something where people want to attend and they're going to get more than just you rah-rahs, it may be something that Archbishop Welby and future Archbishop of Canterbury's want to attend. Time will tell. I forgive Archbishop Welby, who's going to be attending to the baptism of the future king, for avoiding this one.
Well, Kevin, if you ask my wife, would she rather go to the baptism of Prince George of Cambridge or to Nairobi for a week? she would rather go to the baptism of Prince George at Cambridge. I don't think we need to beat him up and be too hard on Archbishop Justin Welby.
George, let's move on to story 2. 2 weeks ago, you went to Canada for a conference where you were attending with very important primates, very important scholars, some professors from very important seminaries, to talk about and lament the last 50 years of Anglicanism. In 1963, they had a duplicate conference that said, "What can we offer the future of the church? The world around us is torrent, horrible, and pagan. We can do better." We got up there this year and said, we haven't done better. The world is still pagan, torrent, and horrible. You got to listen to a special sermon speech talk by Christopher Seitz, who is the Old Testament professor at Wycliffe. He's an Isaiah professional. He said, well, when I read it, it looked like he was raising the white flag. You know, hey, it's all over. The Episcopal Church won.
Well, if you could, in a sort of a cynical say, he was proposing peace with honor, that we're going to withdraw from Vietnam after having made all these sacrifices and struggles. But that's not quite what he was saying. Let me just give you a little bit of background. In 1963, there was the third Pan-Anglican Congress. They had about 2,000 delegates from around the world speak to the future of Anglicanism in this exciting 1960s John F. Kennedy monorail world of the future. And they laid out all these plans, and 50 years later, a conference of academics, scholars, and bishops, about 100 people all told, met at Wycliffe and looked back and said, what happened? Okay. Well, I think we invested too much in monorails. I don't know. But and the speakers were fantastic. Wycliffe did a tremendous job. There was Munir Anis, there was Justin Welby, there was Ian Ernest, the Archbishop of the Indian Ocean, head of Kappa, Bernard Natature, Archbishop of Burundi and head of the UFO Commission. You know, that's the Anglican Unity, Faith, and Order group.
Good.
Archbishop Wabakula, the head of GAFCON from Kenya. Really high-powered gathering. But for the most newsworthy item was, of course, Justin Welby's speech about what he thinks is the future of the Anglican Communion. And that was, we're going to need to really look and pick up Dietrich Bonhoeffer's idea of the church being Christ, meeting Christ in the community. The second most, and for me actually the most personally resonant speech, was from Professor Seitz. Now, I have to say, I've known Professor Seitz.
Yeah. Let's do full disclosure.
He taught me Old Testament at Yale 20-odd years ago. And I have to say, he's scary brilliant. He's a little intimidating because he's so bright and so energetic and so alive. And I would just realize, oh, I'm an idiot whenever I would listen to him, because this was just such an overwhelmingly powerful intellect. So I preface this by saying, this is not some schmo who's just complaining and whining. This is one of the leading thinkers of the Anglican world. Certainly one of the, in the entire Christian community, one of the foremost scholars of Isaiah and the prophets. Mm-hmm. And what did he say?
Yes, well, now that you took up 3 minutes telling us about Christopher Seitz, no, it's interesting because we need to delve down into a person has said, listen, the conservatives have lost. Yes. Was part of his message. And basically, we need to negotiate the best deal we can for the conservatives that want to live and work within the church. Am I right there?
In a nutshell, you're exactly right. He basically said, the battle's over. We can look at the period before 2003 and the period after 2009 and 2012 and see two different Episcopal churches. Mm-hmm. In other words, the pre-Gene Robinson, pre-gay marriage, pre-Catherine Jefferts Schori church, and the post-church. And they're completely, they're quantifiably different. We've had the creation of ACNA. We've had the schisms around the communion. And the political battle has been fought in the Episcopal Church, and the conservatives have lost. It's not going to be refought again. The troops are just not there. And the liberals have scaled the heights of the institutions, and it's theirs. So there are only really two options: get out or negotiate the best possible deal you can now. For some people, and this is George speaking, for some people in untenable dioceses and untenable places where they're in a good church and the rest of the diocese is loony, they're tempted to go out. And that's where ACNA got a lot of its people from. In dioceses like Dallas or Albany or my own Central Florida, we don't have that pressure. We're all, 99% of us are great churches. And this speech was really delivered to those remaining conservative Episcopalians saying you need to negotiate a settlement now. We're going to get a new prayer book with gay marriage. You need to negotiate now to allow an opt-out. So diocese uses book A and this diocese uses book B. You need to have renegotiation of the powers of the presiding bishop so we don't have a repeat of what happened to Mark Lawrence or Bob Duncan, where for political reasons a bishop is chucked out, or Jack Eicher or Keith Ackerman or John David Schofield. We can go down the list, but I don't want to take up the whole show by naming the 1,000+ clergy and bishops who've been kicked out. We need to appeal, Professor Seitz said, to the rational, kind liberal to say, look, you've won the battle. It's now incumbent upon you to exercise your Christian charity to allow a safe space for conservatives. And that really spoke tremendously to me.
Well, it speaks to you, and it speaks to me in a different way. As an observer and a reporter and a person who's followed this for many years with a camera, I say yes, it's wonderful to negotiate with liberals and people with opposing political viewpoints. But I can't, after watching the last 5 or 6 years, wonder if you're trying to negotiate with evil. That the people who are in these positions aren't just politically different than you, but that there's in grasping of an evil nature or a wicked nature. When we see faithful clergy and faithful bishops deposed, that would happen not under a liberal church, but under an evil church. And I understand Christopher Seitz's desire to say, okay, we tried hard, we lost, the battle has been victorious to the liberals. I would say, no, the liberals haven't won, but maybe evil has won, and the church should have its fire sale and let the remaining clergy who are faithful leave. Now, you have a different opinion because you're still in the Episcopal Church.
And from where I am in Central Florida, there is no reason for me to leave. The faith handed down by the saints, the faith once taught and propagated around the world, around the Christian world, is the faith that is the norm for my diocese. I have an excellent bishop. I have a growing, it's not thriving, we're still small, but I have a growing congregation. The gospel is preached, the sacraments are celebrated, and it's a really nice, positive, wonderful community to be a priest in and be in a church. But if I look beyond our borders, it's pretty miserable. And it's really difficult to know what to do. Professor Seitz is not, well, I put in that bit about what he is, where he's coming from, because he's not a fool. And a lot of our viewers are going to say, oh, George, you're just an idiot. You know, how can you just go along to get along? Well, listen, my family's been Episcopalian for a long time. I went to Episcopal Academy when I was a young boy. It's hard for me to give up on something. In other words, it's not like I'm shopping for a new brand, but rather they're these squatters in my church, and I don't want them in there, but I'm not ready to turn over the whole thing to them.
But would you disagree that the discussion is between two equal political opposing points? That there may be a godly character versus a demonic character in this?
Yes, that is true. There certainly is a demonic character, but at the same time, you have to realize that there are coalitions within the Episcopal Church, and it is not a single monolith Katharine Jefferts Schori hard liberal left. Mm-hmm. There are people who start on the kooky side and then go all the way over. And then eventually you meet people like Jim Stanton and Bill Love and Dan Martins and so on. And the point is, where is that middle? Remember, in 1998, the majority of the Episcopal Church bishops at the Lambeth Conference voted for Resolution 110 in support of the Church's traditional viewpoint on gay marriage and gay issues. It's these same bishops, by and large, who brought in Gene Robinson, who brought in Katharine Jefferts Schori. there's a political flux here. Now, I'm not saying these are all wonderful, hale and hearty saints that are all admirable. There are wonderful people and there are some dodgy people. But that's just the way it is with life. And Professor Seitz was saying we need to stop thinking in terms of political warfare, but in strategic terms, how to preserve what we have while the Holy Spirit seems to have withdrawn from the institution.
And I fully agree with you, and I agree with Christopher Seitz that it's time to wave the white flag. The liberals, in my view, the wicked has taken over the church. What people do from here, you need to pray about. If you're in the Episcopal Church and you're called to remain, I see a biblical emphasis on those called to remain to remain. As you can tell, I have the other good-looking guy in Anglican Unscripted, Alan Haley, on the line, and he's dressed up today. He's off to court right after we tape here, but he's got that nice tie on. We've had some interesting news this week from South Carolina, and you always wish that this was the first case that we would start all this with over the last 20 years. It's actually going to be one of the last cases, but the judge here has some chutzpah because it's challenging the Episcopal Church, who thinks that they rule the world of chutzpah. What's going on?
Okay. Well, this was a motion by EPHESIANS in the state court action where Bishop Lawrence brought the initial action with his parishes to protect their trademark and signs. That's all they wanted to do, was declare the declaratory relief that they own their own trademark and signs. Of course, EPHESIANS couldn't let it rest at that. They had to countersue, and they had to countersue for not only the trademark and signs, but for all the diocesan bank accounts, all the diocesan real estate, all the parishes' real estate, and all the parish bank accounts. So they multiplied the suit enormously. And then what they wanted to do was go beyond that. And in addition to naming Bishop Lawrence, his trustees, and all of the individual parishes, they wanted to name also the rectors and vestry members of those individual parishes, some 36 to 38 of them. Now, that would have added on the average around 10 people, defendants to the lawsuit, a total of 380, almost 400 people maybe, added to the lawsuit as individual defendants.
Now, from my reading of the Old Testament, this is perfect. You go after each generation, everybody who's ever been accounted for, the dogs and the fleas on the dogs. Is this what the Episcopal Church is trying to do?
Yeah, it's purely punitive in nature. They're trying to make it as expensive as possible for Bishop Lawrence and his parishes, because every defendant who gets named has to file an appearance in court, and the court collects an appearance fee when you first enter as a plaintiff or a defendant in a case. And in some cases, I know here in California, it's $380 for each defendant that has to file an appearance fee. I don't know what it is in South Carolina, but I'm sure it's substantial. And so this would have raised the stakes considerably for Bishop Lawrence and his parishes, and wasted money, spent it on nothing, because this attempt to make these rectors and vestries individually liable for what? All they've done is follow Bishop Lawrence and follow him out of the diocese. And so it's an attempt it's overreaching by EPHESIANS, and the judge called them on it and said, no, you're not going to be allowed to do this. And that echoed a decision by the California Court of Appeal that we spoke about last week in Stockton and St. John's case. They also there, EPHESIANS tried its technique of suing the rector and vestry, and the judge threw it out, and they took an appeal to it. And the appellate court said, no, the trial court's right. You have no right to sue these people individually.
Well, this kind of leads the Rump Diocese in a catch-22. They want to show up in court and say, we're the real diocese, but the court says you can't say you're the real diocese, even in filing all these motions. Is this unprecedented?
Yes, it's that's another matter that's on for Judge Goodstein next week, a week from today, Friday, the 11th. And there's a hearing on a motion to hold EPHESIANS and I think Bishop von Rosenberg in contempt of court for having continued to use the name Episcopal Diocese of South Carolina, despite the injunction that they agreed to last February. They agreed to making an injunction without opposition that they would not use the name. And then they went into federal court, used the name. They continued for a while to use the name in various aspects on their own diocesan website. But they took those down, but they, continued in federal court to say, hey, we're the real Diocese of South Carolina. Now, all those federal court lawsuits have been dismissed and returned to state court. And so now they're going to have to explain to Judge Goodstein why they thought they had the right under the First Amendment to claim in federal court what she had ordered them not to say they were in state court. And that's going to be a very interesting question. It's no precedent that I can think of, because no one else has had the chutzpah of EPHESIA to claim they are who they are not, namely the Episcopal Diocese of South Carolina.
Are we allowed to send thank you cards to Judge Goodstein as we go on here? Because finally somebody's taking a look at the law. Granted, South Carolina was always going to be a little different. They kind of look at this as carpet bagging and that type of thing. Wow.
I don't know if any of that applies, and no, I wouldn't send her any thank you cards yet. The best thing South Carolina can do is, if she's up for re-election, make sure she gets re-elected, that's all. But I don't know how it works there in South Carolina, what the tenure of the judges is. But in any event, yeah, we can be thankful that this is a judge who is taking time to understand the arguments, to pierce through the cloud of identity fog they try to put up around EPHESIA and say, oh, we're this way, we've been this way since 1789. Well, the Diocese of South Carolina, the Episcopal Diocese of South Carolina, I have news for those who support EPHESIA, is older than EPHESIA. It existed before EPHESIA. And so it was one of the founding dioceses that brought EPHESIA into existence. And to have the Hydra turn on its own creator now and try to come back and nip it in the heel is really a misuse of justice.
Well, we've gone now to Greek mythology.
Yes.
Alan, I want to thank you so much for your report this week. Obviously, it's going to be an interesting fall coming up. There's an appeal going on with Quincy. We're still waiting from some more news around the country. Thank you again.
Okay, very good.
Once again, on the other side of the ocean from Canterbury, we have Peter Old, and we have a brand new development. A lot of people know about women's ordination here in America and in England and a couple other provinces around the world. We've never, ever had a chance in England or the UK to proceed on to women bishops. That has changed, Peter.
It has changed. And there's a really interesting legal conundrum that has come up. Now, let's step back a moment. Imagine that you are an American Anglican priest and you want to come and work in the Church of England. And why not? It's a cool place to work. We've got a queen and everything. If you want to do that, you actually need to get permission from right up the food chain, sort of archbishop level, that you can work in the province. The reason being that we don't have a straightforward reciprocal arrangement where we just accept priests from America. Why would we? Because half of them are heretics. Right? So that's how it basically works. If you want to come into the Church of England, and I guess it works the same way in the Episcopal Church as well. If you want to come in from England, then you need to get
For
approval.
example, Catherine Jefferts-Schori was there 2 years ago. She was not allowed to be there as a bishop. She had to take off her mitre, which she carried in protest at a service.
So the second point is this: we don't recognise, rightly or wrongly, we're not having that argument here, and this whole piece is not about that argument. Rightly or wrongly, we don't recognise women bishops in the Church of England. Okay, so when women bishops come to the Church of England, they basically are politely asked not to act in any bishopy ways, like sticking a mitre on their head or confirming people or stuff like that, and often the women bishops comply happily with that. Sometimes they make a little show of it by carrying their mitre around, which I just think is a bit pointless. But, okay, so you've got these two things where we need to get a special approval for clergy to come into the Church of England. And secondly, we don't recognise women bishops at the moment, rightly or wrongly. Here's an interesting development. The Church of Ireland has got a new bishop, and she's a woman, okay? So what, I hear everybody say.
Well, so what's the big deal, Peter?
Well, so what's the big deal? The thing is, if you're coming from the Church of Ireland, you don't have to get approval from up the food chain to work in a Church of England parish. We've got this kind of reciprocal agreement that we kind of, can swap each other's clergy, and as long as the bishop of the diocese is okay, that's okay.
Another question then. Suppose she appoints a priest.
Well, that's an interesting question. So what happens is this: our friendly lady bishop ordains a priest, and then the priest comes over to England, and the rules at the moment say that priest should be treated like any other priest in the Church of England, just moving from diocese to diocese, as long as there's a tick from the home diocese that they're not naughty and the new diocese likes them, then there they are. And suddenly, the Church of England is recognizing priests ordained by women bishops, de facto recognizing women bishops. And this may not seem like a major issue, especially if you're a fan of women bishops, like many people are here are, and I'm sure many people who watch the Anglican Unscripted are. But here's the problem: it throws everything up in the air, because we will be in the Church of England de facto recognizing women bishops, right? Even to the extent that there's nothing really to stop this woman bishop coming over to England and acting in a bishopy way, because that's what the reciprocal agreements let her do. And so there are apparently lots of lawyers in lots of important buildings, churchy buildings, scratching their heads, and working out how to get around this. And it's a really big issue, because do you remember a year or two ago in Australia, they introduced women bishops, not by a vote in general synod, but like a backdoor sort of, oh, well, the law here isn't quite as tight, and so we'll just let or consecrate a woman as a bishop. That's a bad way to do law. Well, if we're going to have women bishops, we need a proper synod vote for it.
Absolutely, and that happened here in America. We had women clergy and women bishops by a change in grammar. In Australia, it was a change in grammar. In Ireland, it's by vote of the House of Bishops.
Absolutely, and that's the right way to do it.
In India, this week, it happened with an exchange of money. So all this is not the
allegedly.
All right, I'll give you allegedly. All this is not the proper way to do it. We need to do this as a conciliar church, and it's just not being done that way.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's really interesting from a legal perspective, okay? Because up till now, the Church of England has recognised Church of Ireland clergy as just being able to come into the Church of England and do their business. And now we've got a woman bishop in the Church of Ireland, which is great for the Church of Ireland. That's what they wanted. But it doesn't work for us. And it's a really tricky legal problem. How, because are you going to discriminate just against this woman, but let everybody else come in? How are you going to handle clergy who she ordains? All those kind of issues. It's really thorny, especially right at the time when the Church of England is right in the midst of sorting out its own stuff and doesn't want to appear to be sexist.
Or if a certain Catherine Jefferts Shorey went over to visit her and she said, yes, you can perform as a bishop here in the UK.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's okay, because it's the Church of Ireland, so it's not the Church of England.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, absolutely. And you would expect that, because the Church of Ireland recognises women bishops, then you'd expect them to have a woman bishop. But what happens if our woman bishop from Ireland comes over to England and starts to act like a bishop, right? Which, under the current rules, she should be able to do, yeah?
Yeah.
What are we going to do then?
I don't think there's much your lawyers who are stressing themselves out can do. This has to be done at the probably higher than a diocesan level, Church of England level.
It's one of those, absolutely. It's one of those really tricky things where we need to work out our path forward. And as I say, this isn't a pro-women bishops or anti-women bishops argument. It's a really fascinating legal issue.
Both Peter and I agree that we are mature enough in our faith that whatever the conciliar church does, we are there.
Yeah.
You agreed?
Yeah.
Okay, so, not a big deal. So let's move on from here. This is almost Sherlock Holmes worthy, the what's going on behind the scenes. So, oh yeah,
what's going on?
Now, just a quick observation. We had a video last week from Archbishop Justin Welby with no books. So priests in England actually do read books.
Yeah. Apparently so. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Cool.
It's a cool chair that he sat in.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he was. Once again,
Justin Welby. I think that's his own chair.
Yeah.
It's a comfortable chair.
I wonder if you ever sat in it. Once again, Peter from Canterbury, thank you very much. Moving on to story 3, and George, I travel a lot, you travel a lot, and I've been asked or commented on recently that we don't do enough international news. And well, there's a reason for that, and it's not us. We are very faithful reporters. However, we'll hear a breaking story out of Nigeria or Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, South Africa, and we'll send off emails and stuff like that. Tell us what's going on. Can we source that type of thing? You send off an email on a Monday. The following Monday, you may get a reply that that email box is no longer there, the person doesn't work there anymore, or they'll reply, I never heard of this. So getting information from international news sources is very difficult. Our main big breaking stories over the last year and a half have come from missionaries on the ground in these countries who provided us with, did you know this was a corrupt election? Did you know this person was, off for this reason and stuff like that? So our information doesn't come from the provinces or from the diocese, but from people who are on the ground. We would like to change all that, and hopefully over the next year we can develop some better source material from provinces and dioceses around the world. So this is going to be our little Anglican 360. I know it's stolen from somebody, but we're going to talk about the 4 news stories going around the world. First, there was a new female bishop elected in Ireland, a new female bishop elected in India, and some dude who couldn't get a job in Virginia is now been appointed a bishop in San Joaquin. George, what am I talking about?
No elections, all appointments.
All appointments, that's right.
Reverend Pat Story, member of the Standing Committee of the Church of Ireland and a priest in Londonderry, was appointed the first bishop of Neath and Kildare. The diocese had a problem where the last election, the guy elected had a whole cemetery of skeletons in his closet. They had another election. They couldn't decide, so the choice was given to the Church of Ireland bishops, who announced that they were going to make a statement and did an affirmative action hire. They appointed Pat Story, and I never heard a bad thing about her, but the Church of Ireland was up front that this was an affirmative action hire. We've had women bishop legislation on the books for 20-odd years. No women bishops, because the people won't elect one. Well, we're going to appoint one.
It's time.
In India, same thing. Church of South India has had women clergy since 74, I believe, and there are about 115 women clergy, about of the 1,000+ clergy they have. Well, in the Diocese of Nandyal, which is in Andhra Pradesh and just up the road from Madras on the Bay of Bengal side of India, bishop retired, had an election. The candidates in India, the diocese elects 4 people, and then the national church office then selects one of the 4. Well, there was a problem with political infighting, corruption, charges were traded, political jockeying, whose team is on who and so, and the national church refused to accept any of the candidates. So they had another election, and 4 names were chosen, 3 supporting the on the same team as the 4 original ones, and 1 loyalist to the national church, who happened to be a woman. And she, Pushpa Lalitha, became the first bishop of South India. After the fact, the Indian church said, oh, we're really advancing the cause of women. Oh, isn't this wonderful? But she was appointed because she was the only loyalist to get to the national church political party in power to get through the system. And David Rice, in San Joaquin, Bishop of Waiapu, in New Zealand. He's an American. He was from North Carolina, went to Duke Divinity School, became a Methodist minister, served Methodist churches until about 97 when he went to New Zealand, became an Anglican over there, was elected a bishop after a while, and he's been trying to come home. In March, he ran to be Bishop of Southwestern Virginia, didn't get the job. And so he's been looking for a job, and Catherine Jefferts Schori has nominated him, appointed him to be the provisional bishop of San Joaquin, subject to, of course, the rubber stamp approval of their diocesan synod in March.
Well, we need to be upfront.
David Rice is coming home.
Yeah, let's be upfront. San Joaquin cannot support a bishop of the Rump Diocese. They don't have any money, very few churches, so it wasn't like they're going to hold an election and bring in a bishop that they could afford, support, give housing to. This is something that's being supported by the Episcopal Church in so many ways. That's the international news for this week. Now,
Just a sec. Kevin, I know this stuff. I love and breathe this stuff. Folks, read Anglican Inc. if you really want the details in this stuff. But see, in New Zealand, David Rice was considered a moderate centrist on the conservative side. And it's going to be fascinating to see how he turns out in San Joaquin, because, you know, San Joaquin now is the home of that transgender deacon, and they've gone from being one of the most conservative dioceses in the Episcopal Church. The part that's still aligned with the national church is now one of the kookiest groups, and their bishop is probably going to be more conservative than their people. It'll be fascinating to see what happens.
Now, people who just listened to the last report, does it bother you that George can name all these different places in India just like that with perfect pronunciation? It creeps me out a little. We're going to talk about some more GAFCON news in our last story this week. Specifically, Archbishop Wabukula, the primate of Kenya, wrote a letter responding to the terrorist attacks, and he brought up some real important points. First of all, terrorists have mass communication and the ability to put out their message clearly, succinctly on the internet. They're Twitter terrorists. Secondly, the church doesn't. The church does not at all found a way to encapsulate and put its message of a transformational gospel onto the internet. If they are, it's not being heard. And this is really interesting because George and I did a story a couple weeks ago about the church in Nigeria wanting to invest $1 million into a cable television station. Now, as a social networking media mogul, I can tell you that's the last way you want to reach young people. My parents barely watch cable television. Everything from this date forward is done via the internet, either video or text on the internet. Television stations, even cable, is the old model. Yeah, it worked well. It reached millions of people. But nobody sits down for those 6 p.m. anchor news shows anymore. I could not name for you ABC, NBC, or CBS's anchors because we don't watch them anymore. Your kids, the 30 and younger, get their news from Comedy Central with Jon Stewart. And that's the changing dynamic of social networking. There's also something even bigger about social networking. Since we started this little segment talking about it 3 minutes ago, it's changed. It's constantly evolving faster than anything ever before because it's what we call reflective. We get energy, we get solace, we get entertainment, and it feeds our hedonistic desire to find out who liked something we put on Facebook, who's replying or retweeting something we tweeted. It's giving us our identity and our pleasure, and there is the evil of the internet is we're using it for our self-revelation. Now, how does the church compete with that? And
there's a bromide from the 70s, Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message. And we're allowing that to take place. We're allowing the medium, social media, to be the message rather than the transforming gospel of Jesus Christ. Archbishop Wabukula, in his GAFCON letter, noted that Islamic terrorists have successfully used mass communications to radicalize troubled people around the world. These Boston bombers were radicalized via the internet. The church has not, the Anglican Church in particular, has not found a way to reach out and meet people where they are and speak to them in a language and in a medium that is contemporary to them. Kumbaya praise music, in other words, we always seem to be a generation or two behind. That was your critique of the Nigerian cable network. And Archbishop Wabukula says, look, folks, we've got to get serious. We have a transforming message, and we're just not doing a good job in disseminating it in this fast-changing world.
Let me help you out here. Who do you want to reach? If you want to reach your kids, how are they getting their information? Look out on the streets of Nigeria, of Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, all of Africa. Your children aren't sitting in front of televisions. Your children have smartphones, or they have friends who have smartphones, or they have computers. They're watching videos, they're watching YouTube. They're getting their information from these small little devices, not from cable television, not from broadcast television. If you want to speak to them, you have to speak to them in the language they understand. And Right now, that's 144 characters. That's Facebook identification, and that's visual communication. We've brought up 2 generations now of people who get their information visually.
I was speaking to George Sumner, who's the principal of Wycliffe College in Toronto, about 2 weeks ago. We were having a lovely chat, and we were talking about the changing nature of Africa. He was a missionary in Tanzania about 25 years ago, and he went back recently, and one of the things that just floored him was that there are still places in Tanzania without cable lines, telephone lines, electricity is run by generators. They've got cell phones. Not all of them have smartphones, but they're moving in that direction. You can go to the back of the beyond in Nigeria, and there will be people with smartphones, with telephones. They've skipped landlines. Technology is leaping forward. It's not just progressing uniformly forward. They're skipping whole generations of technology. And if the church is building a technological infrastructure that goes out through cable lines, that goes out through the post in a newspaper, and people don't have mail service and they don't have TVs, but they have a smartphone, you're wasting your money.
I hate to say it, but print is dead as far as newspaper and magazines go. What you find now is online. If you're not doing it with bits and bytes, you're not reaching the people who really want to hear the transforming love of Jesus Christ. But when they don't hear that, they're going to turn to the next best thing. And that's those people who say, you need to hate society and hate those Christians. And if you get rid of those Christians, you'll feel better. Let's close out episode 83 of Anglican Unscripted. Few notes. George and I are going over to Nairobi, Kenya for GAFCON. We leave here the October 17th, come back around the 30th. Shooting Anglican Unscripted in the next couple weeks, next 4 weeks, is going to be hit and miss. We have to put our schedules together, we have to edit it and stuff like that. So there's no guarantee if we're going to come out on a Friday or a Saturday or Monday. I recommend you go to this email address right here, this link, and sign up to get the broadcast emails we send out when every episode is launched. And the first people who know that there's a new Anglican Unscripted episode are the people who are subscribed to this list. Secondly, George, what an incredible week we had on Anglican Inc. Plenty of new stories, lots of new content. We're getting now about 1,000 people a day coming to Anglican Inc. to read the stories. What was your favorite story the last couple days?
It's impossible to say. We're knocking out, I think we're going to be close to 25, 30 stories this past week. It's hard. My favorite story is always the last one I wrote. Okay. And there's some really good stuff. We've had, Girl Guides Dump God. That was picked up by some people. I thought that was interesting, but man, that just flew through the roof. And it's just fascinating to see what people like and look at. I broke the news of Archbishop Vitari dying. I got it from his grandson's Facebook page. And I could hear the crickets in the background. Traditionally, in the print setting, that would have been the big story. Not a squeak.
Yeah, not much going on. And we talked about the new media, the social media, and how it changes and evolves so quickly. I was surprised that Anglican Inc. was doing so well. A lot of it is we're going to have a new story every day, maybe a couple stories, and to see people coming, we can see who comes. And a lot of people are just typing the root address.
We're watching you.
Yeah, or AnglicanInc.com. And they're going right to the main page and clicking on stories. That's great. We also do this with Facebook and stuff like that. You can be my friend on Facebook by going to facebook.com/K Carlson. George, how would they find you on Facebook?
Look for the good-looking guy with the beautiful daughters.
He is right.
GEO Conger is my handle, I guess you call it. I don't know, Kevin. What are the phrases? I'm an old fart on these things.
Yeah. Old fart, GEO Conger. I'll put the link up here so you can click on it and get into that. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger. And you've been watching episode 83 of Anglican Unscripted.
Not so hard. That wasn't hard at all. All right, so I'm going to take a couple big swigs here.
And there's Susan. Susan's had the worst cold all week. She's been hacked. You see what I have to put up with?
Quiet on the side.
Say hello.
Hi, Kevin. If he looks
Hi,
terrible, it's
Susan.
because I've been keeping him up with my cough.
That's all right.
Oh,
Hey,
but she's so
I-
pretty.
I have not had a pregnant cat update. Has the cat had kittens yet?
No, the cat has discovered that if we have a sofa that's against the wall, and if it sits on the top of the sofa, its stomach can hang down in the crack between the sofa and the wall. And it sits there all day long, so it's ready to pop any second now. And it's starting to fart. I mean, our dog Biscuit farted all the time. You know, Biscuit, high sulfur dog food, Biscuit.
I know.
Plenty of garlic and that stuff. But the cat
knew it
never
was-
stank. But now the cat's having all this gastric stuff.
We had the same problem with our dog. We know to cover our nose because the dog will automatically get out of his bed and run out of the room. And that means it's going to be really bad in about 10 seconds. And you're, oh my God.
I saw the funniest. Susan loves Facebook. I say, "What are you doing?" She's playing Facebook.
Okay, yeah.
She loves it, and she likes to look at all these dumb videos. And she showed me this one yesterday of Megyn Kelly, the Fox News host,
Sure. Yeah.
farting on air.
I play one on TV though. Yeah.
Thanks, TG. Isn't that
Okay.
incredible? Don't you want to know more about that? I mean, it like gives you a little hope. If you keel over from a heart attack, they get the frozen blanket there. I mean, maybe you just have your spouse stuffing you in the freezer. Not really. You need a big freezer. And really, you know, your spouse isn't going to want to do that at that moment. Oh, God. Okay, there's more. There's more. We have to stay tuned. It's out of this break.
She's pregnant, and so she doesn't have the control that she would normally exercise. And then I don't know if it was an outtake or a blooper or something, but she obviously farted. And then all the soundstage crew started making fart noises, and causing her to, because she like kept her thing, and then she smiled, and then all the crew started going. So I don't know if they were filming a promo or something. I don't know, but it
Who
was
knows?
funny.
Well, that's the magic we have. We can do more takes. George, let's go on to story 2, and maybe this will be a one take like story 1 was. So we're going to talk about this event you went to up in Toronto called the Toronto Future of All Anglican Conference. What was it called?
I have no idea. I don't remember.
You don't remember?
That was so long ago, Kevin. I don't remember what I had for breakfast.
You went to
Ask
a
me
conference.
who said what at the 1998 Lambeth Conference on Tuesday afternoon at 3
Good.
o'clock. I got it. What did I have for breakfast? What did I eat? Where was I 2 weeks ago?
Nothing.
Nothing. Not a clue.
3, 2, 1. If you're hungry, if you're called to leave the church, there are now plenty of alternatives, even in this fractured communion. Oh man, George, we did really good there.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I am hungry. I thought.
I'm like, what's? It was so bad. It sounded like somebody flushed the toilet. Like, whoa!
Well, I need to move the microphone a little higher up on my lapel, I think.
Hilarious.
Did I say enough?
Any better?
You get what you got, but
I'll turn that off as well. Would you like some overhead lights, or is that enough?
no, you're fine. You are fine. My recording's working. My audio's working. Your
I'm
audio's
just going to
working.
check that I'm recording now, okay?
Okay, good.
I'm recording, so that's
Okay,
cool.
good. 3, 2, 1. Welcoming to the show, not for the first time, not quite for the 200th time, Alan. No, got it not awake yet, Alan.
Who is this Alan person
I
you were
don't
talking about?
know. Oh, hold on. I need to sip the coffee. My friend.
Yeah, I had my espresso 5 hours ago. I'm all right, mate.
My friend.
This is going to make it to the outtakes, yeah? Oh, I think so.
My
What do you mean
outtakes
you
never
hope
make-
not? You write the bloody outtakes. Who's the editor here,
I don't
Kevin?
know. He's getting
The
fired.
mysterious-